Chosen one, Archangel Michael says, your faith this morning changed what comes next, even if you did not consciously recognize it happening at the time, even if this morning felt like any other ordinary morning, filled with routine and the usual demands of beginning another day. Stay with this message a little longer than you might normally give to something like this. Something shifted today, quietly, in a way that deserves your genuine attention rather than being dismissed simply because it did not announce itself with any dramatic or obvious signal at the moment it actually occurred. Breathe slowly. Let your body settle into stillness for these next few minutes. Whatever has filled the remainder of your day since this morning, set it aside now, because what this message describes deserves genuine reflection rather than the passing, distracted attention most content receives during an ordinary busy day. Think back, honestly, to this morning, to whatever you did, thought, or felt during those first waking moments before the day's demands fully claimed your attention. Perhaps you prayed, formally or informally, words spoken or simply held silently within your own thoughts. Perhaps you expressed gratitude for something specific, however small it may have seemed in that particular moment. Perhaps you made a quiet decision, a commitment to approach something difficult with courage rather than continued avoidance. Perhaps you simply chose, even briefly, to trust that things would work out reasonably well, despite genuine uncertainty about specific outcomes still remaining ahead of you. Whatever specific form this morning's faith took for you, however modest or unremarkable it may have felt in the moment, this message is asking you to consider that this particular moment carried more genuine significance than you may have initially recognized, shifting something in the unfolding trajectory of what comes next in your life, even though the full evidence of that shift may not yet be fully visible from where you currently stand. Take a moment to genuinely locate this morning within your memory, as specifically as you can. Where were you? What was the light like in the room, or outside if you were somewhere else? What specific thought or feeling first prompted whatever moment of faith you eventually expressed? This kind of specific, sensory recollection often helps anchor the memory more firmly, making it easier to genuinely engage with rather than treating it as a vague, general impression already beginning to blur together with countless other ordinary mornings. Here is something worth understanding about why small moments of genuine faith often carry more significance than they initially appear to hold. Faith, in its most authentic and grounded sense, rarely announces itself dramatically. It typically shows up quietly, in small, unremarkable choices, choosing hope over despair during a difficult moment, choosing trust over anxious control when circumstances remain genuinely uncertain, choosing gratitude over complaint even when circumstances have not yet fully resolved in whatever way you might be hoping for. Picture the countless small choices that fill any ordinary day, most of them entirely unremarkable, passing without any particular notice or significance attached to them. Genuine faith, when it appears amid this larger backdrop of ordinary choices, stands apart precisely because it represents something different, a conscious turning toward hope and trust rather than simply defaulting automatically toward whatever habitual pattern, whether anxious or hopeful, typically governs your usual, unexamined responses to daily circumstances. These small moments accumulate significance not because any single instance dramatically transforms your entire life on its own, but because each one represents a genuine choice, a small but real turning away from fear, doubt, or despair, towards something more aligned with trust, hope, and genuine openness to positive possibility. Enough of these small choices, made consistently over time, gradually shape both your internal experience and, through mechanisms not always fully visible or explainable, the actual unfolding trajectory of your outer circumstances as well. Reflect on what specifically this morning's expression of faith actually involved, naming it as clearly and specifically as you genuinely can rather than leaving it as a vague, general impression. Was it a specific prayer, spoken about a specific concern or hope? Was it a specific decision to approach a particular situation differently than your usual pattern might have suggested? Was it simply a quiet, internal shift in how you were choosing to relate to whatever difficulty or uncertainty currently exists in your life? Naming this specific expression of faith clearly matters, because it transforms this message's central claim from vague, unfalsifiable spiritual language into something you can actually examine honestly against your own genuine, remembered experience from earlier today. Here is something worth understanding about how faith actually influences what unfolds next, offered in terms that remain grounded and genuinely useful rather than requiring you to accept claims that cannot be meaningfully examined or understood. Faith influences subsequent outcomes through several interconnected mechanisms, some more directly observable than others, all worth understanding as you consider how this morning's specific expression of faith might genuinely be shaping what comes next in your unfolding circumstances. Faith shapes attention. When you approach a situation with genuine trust and hope rather than pure anxiety or despair, your attention naturally becomes more capable of noticing opportunities, resources, and positive possibilities that anxious, contracted attention often overlooks entirely. This is not mystical or unexplainable. It reflects genuine, observable psychological patterns regarding how emotional states influence perception and attention, patterns well documented through both personal experience and more formal psychological understanding. Consider a specific example from ordinary experience that illustrates this same pattern clearly. A person walking through an unfamiliar city while anxious and fearful tends to notice primarily potential threats or dangers, while a person walking through that same city with genuine curiosity and openness tends to notice interesting details, friendly faces, unexpected beauty, entirely different aspects of the identical physical environment. The environment itself has not changed between these two experiences. Only the quality of attention has shifted, and that shift in attention genuinely produces a meaningfully different lived experience of the same objective circumstances. Faith shapes behavior. When you approach circumstances with genuine hope rather than resignation, you typically remain more willing to take reasonable risks, to reach out to others, to persist through inevitable difficulty, all behaviors that meaningfully influence actual outcomes over time, compared to the behavior patterns that anxious resignation or despair typically produce instead. Faith shapes relationship. When you approach interactions with others from a place of genuine trust and openness, rather than defensive anxiety or suspicion, this often produces measurably different responses from the people you interact with, sometimes opening doors to connection, support, or opportunity that a more guarded, anxious approach might have inadvertently closed off instead. Beyond these more directly observable mechanisms, many people also hold genuine spiritual or religious understanding regarding faith's influence on unfolding circumstances, understanding that extends beyond purely psychological explanation into genuinely spiritual territory regarding how genuine faith connects to divine action or cosmic responsiveness. This message honors both frameworks, the more grounded psychological explanation and the more explicitly spiritual understanding, recognizing that different people hold different frameworks for understanding these genuine, observable patterns regarding how faith appears to influence subsequent outcomes. Consider which framework, or combination of frameworks, genuinely resonates with your own particular worldview and understanding, allowing whichever framework feels most authentic to you personally to inform how you receive this message's central claim regarding this morning's faith and its genuine significance for what comes next in your unfolding circumstances. Here is something worth understanding about why this particular morning specifically may have carried unusual significance, beyond simply being one ordinary morning among countless others throughout your life. Sometimes faith expressed during particularly difficult or uncertain periods carries disproportionate significance precisely because it represents genuine choice made despite real difficulty, rather than easy optimism offered during already comfortable circumstances that required little genuine courage or trust to access. Consider the specific difference between offering hope when everything already feels secure and comfortable, compared to offering genuine trust and hope while circumstances remain genuinely difficult or uncertain. The second kind of faith requires something the first does not: actual courage, a willingness to choose trust despite evidence that might otherwise justify continued fear or despair. This distinction matters significantly when considering why this particular morning's faith, if it did indeed arrive amid genuine difficulty, deserves this message's particular attention and recognition. Reflect honestly on whether this morning's specific expression of faith arrived during a period of genuine difficulty or uncertainty in your life, rather than during an already comfortable, easy stretch where trust and hope required relatively little genuine courage to access and express. If this morning's faith did indeed arrive amid genuine difficulty, this context itself lends additional significance to what occurred, evidence of genuine choice made specifically when that choice actually required real courage, rather than simply reflecting circumstances that already made hope and trust relatively easy and automatic. Here is something further worth understanding about what genuinely shifting as a result of this morning's faith might actually mean in practical, concrete terms, rather than remaining abstract spiritual language disconnected from your actual, lived circumstances. This shift likely does not mean instant, dramatic transformation of your entire life circumstances occurring immediately and completely as a direct, isolated result of this single morning alone. It more likely means a subtle but genuine shift in trajectory, a slight but real change in direction that will likely become more visible gradually over the coming days and weeks, rather than announcing itself immediately and dramatically in ways impossible to miss or overlook. Picture two nearly parallel paths, diverging only slightly at their initial starting point, yet leading, over sufficient distance, to genuinely different destinations. This morning's faith may represent exactly this kind of small but meaningful divergence, a slight shift in direction that, while barely perceptible in these initial moments immediately following it, gradually produces genuinely different outcomes as time continues to unfold, and that small initial shift continues compounding through subsequent choices and circumstances. Consider what specific area of your life this morning's faith connected to most directly, since this particular area is likely where you should pay closest attention for evidence of this gradual, unfolding shift over the coming period. If your faith this morning connected to a specific relationship, watch for subtle shifts in that relationship's dynamics over the coming days and weeks. If it connected to a specific work or financial concern, watch for subtle shifts in opportunities or circumstances related to that particular area. If it connected to your own internal state, your own sense of peace, confidence, or clarity, watch for subtle shifts in how you experience your daily life more broadly, evidence that this morning's genuine choice has indeed begun influencing your ongoing experience in ways that extend beyond that single isolated moment. Here is something worth understanding about sustaining this morning's faith throughout the remainder of today and the days that follow, since a single moment of genuine faith, however significant, typically requires continued reinforcement in order to produce its fullest potential impact, rather than remaining an isolated instance quickly forgotten amid the ordinary demands and distractions that inevitably fill the remainder of any given day. Notice how quickly ordinary daily circumstances tend to reclaim attention once a significant morning moment has passed: work demands, family responsibilities, countless small tasks and distractions competing for your focus throughout the remainder of the day. This is not a personal failing unique to you specifically. It simply reflects how attention naturally operates for nearly everyone, requiring deliberate, conscious effort in order to sustain connection to something significant amid this constant pull toward whatever feels most immediately urgent in each passing moment. Consider what specific practice might help you return to and reinforce this morning's genuine faith throughout the remainder of today, rather than allowing it to fade entirely once the day's ordinary demands and distractions fully claim your attention. This might mean a brief moment of conscious return to that morning feeling or decision, perhaps during a natural pause in your day, a lunch break, an evening transition, whatever moment naturally offers itself as an opportunity for brief, renewed connection to this morning's genuine expression of faith and trust. This might mean simply noticing, throughout the remainder of today, any small evidence that seems to confirm or support whatever this morning's faith specifically addressed, allowing these small pieces of evidence to reinforce rather than dismiss the genuine significance of what occurred earlier today. This might mean, this evening, briefly reflecting on the day as a whole, honestly assessing whether you managed to sustain this morning's genuine trust and hope throughout the day, or whether it gradually eroded under the pressure of ordinary daily demands and difficulties. Here is something worth understanding about the specific relationship between faith and genuine, practical action, since faith that remains purely internal, disconnected from any corresponding practical engagement with your actual circumstances, typically produces less significant impact than faith that genuinely informs and shapes concrete action moving forward. This morning's faith, whatever specific form it took, likely deserves some form of practical follow-through, translating internal trust and hope into concrete engagement with whatever situation or circumstance that faith specifically addressed. Consider the difference between someone who feels genuine hope about a particular situation but takes no corresponding action, continuing to behave exactly as they did before that moment of hope occurred, compared to someone whose genuine hope translates into at least some small, concrete step forward. These two people, despite sharing the same initial internal experience, often end up in quite different places over time, precisely because one allowed that internal shift to inform actual behavior while the other did not, leaving the hope purely theoretical rather than genuinely operative within their actual, practical circumstances. Consider what specific practical action might genuinely flow from this morning's expression of faith, action that would represent authentic follow-through rather than allowing this morning's genuine moment to remain purely internal, disconnected from any corresponding engagement with your actual, practical circumstances. This does not need to be dramatic or immediately transformative. It simply needs to represent genuine, concrete continuation of whatever trust or hope you expressed this morning, translated into some form of actual, practical engagement with your real, lived circumstances. Notice whether a specific action already comes to mind readily as you consider this question, or whether it requires a bit more genuine reflection to identify clearly. Either response is completely normal. Some mornings of faith connect obviously and immediately to a clear subsequent action. Others require a bit more patient consideration before the appropriate next step becomes genuinely clear, and that additional consideration itself represents valuable, worthwhile engagement with this process rather than any kind of failure or inadequacy on your part. Here is something worth understanding about doubt, since doubt likely has arisen at some point during this particular reflection, questioning whether this message's central claim genuinely applies to your own specific situation, or whether it simply represents generic spiritual encouragement offered broadly without genuine connection to your actual, particular circumstances and experience. This doubt deserves honest acknowledgement rather than automatic dismissal, though it also deserves genuine examination rather than uncritical acceptance as necessarily representing the complete, final truth of the matter. Notice, honestly, what specific quality your own doubt carries as you sit with it right now. Does it feel like careful, considered evaluation, weighing this message's specific claims against your own genuine memory and experience of this particular morning? Or does it feel more automatic, a kind of reflexive dismissal that arises regardless of the specific content being considered, simply because the framing itself, explicitly spiritual and somewhat dramatic in its presentation, triggers a general, habitual skepticism that operates independently of whatever specific content happens to be under consideration in any given instance? Consider whether your own doubt reflects genuine, careful examination, concluding that this morning genuinely did not involve anything particularly significant worth this message's attention, or whether it reflects more habitual, reflexive skepticism toward anything framed in explicitly spiritual language, regardless of whether genuine, personally significant content might actually exist somewhere within that spiritual framing. Both forms of doubt deserve respect, though they call for somewhat different responses as you continue engaging with this particular reflection. Here is a further consideration worth holding as you continue reflecting on this particular message and its central claim regarding this morning's genuine significance. This message is not asking you to abandon reasonable judgment or careful, honest self-examination in favor of uncritical acceptance of whatever spiritual claims happen to be presented to you. It is simply inviting genuine reflection on whether this morning's specific experience, whatever it actually involved, might carry more significance than ordinary daily busyness typically allows you to fully notice and appreciate in the moment it actually occurs. Think about how frequently genuinely significant moments pass by entirely unnoticed simply because ordinary daily life rarely offers built-in opportunities for the kind of reflective pause this message is currently providing. Most days move quickly, one activity flowing into the next, leaving little natural space for genuinely examining which specific moments, among the countless small experiences that fill any given day, might actually carry disproportionate significance worth deliberate, conscious recognition rather than passing by unexamined alongside everything else. Consider what it would mean to hold both healthy, appropriate skepticism and genuine openness simultaneously as you continue engaging with this particular reflection, rather than assuming these two orientations must necessarily conflict with or exclude one another. Healthy skepticism protects against naive, uncritical acceptance of claims that may not genuinely apply to your actual circumstances. Genuine openness protects against dismissing something potentially significant simply because it arrives wrapped in explicitly spiritual language that your particular worldview may not automatically embrace or prioritize. Think of these two qualities not as opposing forces requiring you to choose one over the other, but as complementary capacities that, held together, allow for the kind of genuine, discerning engagement that serves you far better than either extreme alone. Pure skepticism, applied without exception, risks dismissing genuinely valuable insight simply because of its packaging or framing. Pure credulity, applied without exception, risks accepting claims uncritically regardless of whether they genuinely apply to your actual circumstances. The combination of both qualities, held in appropriate balance, tends to serve genuine discernment far more effectively than either quality operating alone and unchecked by its complement. Here is something worth understanding about gratitude as you continue reflecting on this particular message, since genuine gratitude for this morning's faith, however modest it may have initially seemed, tends to reinforce and strengthen whatever positive shift that faith may have already begun setting into motion within your unfolding circumstances. Consider taking a moment, right now, to genuinely appreciate whatever specific expression of faith occurred this morning, regardless of how small or unremarkable it may have felt at the time it actually happened. Notice, as you extend this genuine appreciation, whether any specific feeling or sensation accompanies it, perhaps a subtle warmth, a slight easing of tension, some small internal shift that suggests this gratitude itself carries genuine meaning rather than remaining purely a mental exercise disconnected from any actual felt experience. This physical or emotional response, when present, often indicates that genuine gratitude is actually occurring, rather than simply going through the motions of an exercise this message has suggested without any authentic internal engagement accompanying it. This gratitude does not require certainty about exactly how or whether this morning's faith is genuinely shifting your subsequent circumstances in the specific ways this message has been describing throughout its content. It simply involves genuine appreciation for having chosen trust, hope, or courage during that particular morning moment, regardless of whatever ultimately unfolds as a direct or indirect result of that specific choice. Consider the specific role that memory and reflection play in this entire process, since genuinely absorbing the significance of this morning's faith often requires deliberate, conscious remembering rather than allowing the moment to simply fade into the general blur of ordinary daily experience the way most passing moments eventually do. Take a few minutes, if you are genuinely willing, to actually write down what occurred this morning, the specific circumstances, the specific thought or feeling or decision that constituted this expression of faith, and whatever you currently hope or trust might result from it moving forward. This kind of written reflection accomplishes several things simultaneously. It helps solidify the memory itself, making it less likely to fade entirely amid the ordinary busyness of subsequent days. It creates a specific record you can return to later, allowing you to genuinely assess, with concrete reference rather than vague, unreliable memory alone, whether subsequent circumstances did indeed begin shifting in ways connected to this particular morning. It also, simply through the act of writing itself, tends to deepen your own conscious engagement with what occurred, transforming a fleeting internal experience into something more concrete and genuinely examined. Explore, too, what specific role community or shared reflection might play in this process, since sharing genuine moments of faith with trusted others often deepens their significance and impact beyond what purely private, internal reflection alone typically achieves. If you have someone in your life who would genuinely understand and appreciate hearing about this morning's particular experience, consider sharing it with them, not necessarily to seek validation or confirmation, but simply as an act of honoring the moment through genuine expression and connection with another person who cares about your ongoing journey and continued growth. Contemplate, as well, how this practice of noticing and honoring small moments of genuine faith might gradually reshape your overall relationship with daily life, moving from a pattern where such moments typically pass by entirely unnoticed and unappreciated, toward a pattern where they receive genuine recognition and, through that recognition, potentially greater ongoing influence over your unfolding circumstances and overall life trajectory. This shift does not happen instantly through a single reflection like this one. It develops gradually, through consistent practice over time, each instance of genuine recognition and appreciation building upon those that came before it. Here is a final significant consideration before this message moves toward its close. Whether or not you fully accept this message's specific framing regarding how this morning's faith has genuinely shifted your unfolding circumstances, the underlying invitation remains valuable regardless of your specific spiritual or philosophical framework. That invitation is simply this: to notice and honor the small moments of genuine faith, hope, and trust that occur throughout your ordinary days, rather than allowing them to pass by unnoticed and unappreciated amid the ordinary busyness and distraction that typically fills most people's daily experience. These small moments, whatever specific significance they ultimately carry regarding your actual unfolding circumstances, deserve genuine recognition and appreciation, evidence of your own continued capacity for hope, trust, and courage even amid whatever genuine difficulty or uncertainty currently exists within your particular life circumstances. Reflect on how this capacity for hope and trust, demonstrated through this morning's specific choice, connects to a broader pattern within your own life history, moments across your past where similar choices toward faith and trust, rather than fear and despair, ultimately proved significant in ways that may only have become fully clear through subsequent reflection and hindsight. This morning's faith likely belongs to this same broader pattern, another instance of a capacity you have demonstrated before and will likely continue demonstrating throughout whatever remains ahead in your ongoing life journey. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final moment for yourself, genuinely absorbing what has emerged throughout this reflection rather than rushing immediately toward whatever comes next in your day. Recall, specifically, this morning's particular expression of faith, naming it as clearly as you genuinely can. Consider, briefly, what practical follow-through might genuinely honor and continue that morning's authentic choice, translating internal faith into concrete, ongoing engagement with your actual circumstances. This does not need to feel dramatic or overwhelming in order to matter significantly. It simply needs to feel genuine, honest reflection on an actual moment from your own real experience, rather than either uncritically accepting this message's central claim without any genuine examination, or dismissing it entirely without giving genuine consideration to whether something authentic and worth honoring did indeed occur during your own particular morning experience today. Trust that this message reached you today for a genuine reason, connecting specifically to something real that occurred within your own actual experience this morning, rather than arriving randomly or without any genuine relevance to your particular circumstances. Something in you recognized enough potential significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have dismissed this message entirely had it genuinely carried no connection to anything real from your own actual morning experience. Consider, too, what it might mean to continue this practice beyond today, paying closer attention, on an ongoing basis, to the small moments of genuine faith, hope, and trust that occur throughout your daily life, rather than allowing them to consistently pass by unnoticed amid the ordinary busyness that typically characterizes most people's daily experience. This kind of ongoing attention, cultivated consistently over time, tends to deepen your relationship with whatever spiritual or philosophical framework genuinely resonates with your own particular worldview, while also potentially supporting the kind of positive psychological and relational patterns already discussed throughout this message regarding how genuine faith appears to influence subsequent circumstances and outcomes. Reflect, as well, on whether tomorrow morning might offer another opportunity for this same kind of genuine faith, hope, or trust, deliberately chosen rather than simply hoped for passively. Consider what specific practice might help you approach tomorrow morning with similar genuine intention, whether through brief prayer or reflection, through conscious gratitude practice, or through simply setting a clear, deliberate intention regarding how you want to approach whatever the coming day happens to bring. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something practical that ties together everything shared today into sustained, meaningful practice extending well beyond this single reflection alone. Consider what specific pattern of attention you might cultivate over the coming days and weeks, one that helps you consistently notice similar moments of genuine faith as they arise, rather than requiring an external message like this one to retrospectively draw your attention toward significance you did not fully register in the actual moment it originally occurred. This kind of cultivated attention typically develops through consistent, gentle practice, briefly pausing at various points throughout each day to notice whatever genuine choices toward hope, trust, or courage have occurred, however small or seemingly unremarkable they might initially appear. Reflect on what specific time of day might work best for this kind of brief, regular reflection, given your own particular schedule and rhythm. Perhaps a few minutes each morning, setting a clear, deliberate intention for how you want to approach the coming day. Perhaps a few minutes each evening, reviewing the day that has just concluded, noticing whatever moments of genuine faith may have occurred, even if they were not fully recognized as significant in the actual moment they originally happened. Perhaps both practices together, bookending each day with intentional reflection that supports this kind of cultivated attention over time. Consider, too, what specific obstacles might arise as you attempt to sustain this practice beyond today, obstacles worth anticipating now rather than being caught entirely unprepared when they eventually arise during busier or more difficult periods. Perhaps simple forgetting, the practice gradually fading from conscious intention amid the ordinary demands of daily life. Perhaps skepticism resurfacing during more difficult periods, questioning whether this kind of attention genuinely matters or produces any real, meaningful benefit. Perhaps simply busyness, days becoming so full that even brief moments of reflection feel difficult to genuinely prioritize and protect. Whatever specific obstacle feels most likely for your own particular circumstances, briefly considering how you might respond to it in advance can help you sustain this practice more effectively than simply hoping motivation alone will prove sufficient without any additional structure or advance preparation. Contemplate what genuine benefit you might reasonably expect from sustaining this kind of practice over an extended period, benefit that extends beyond simply whatever specific outcome this particular morning's faith may or may not have already begun influencing. Increased capacity for genuine hope and trust, even amid difficult circumstances. Greater overall sense of meaning and purpose, connected to recognizing your own ongoing agency and choice regarding how you approach each day's particular circumstances and challenges. Deeper connection to whatever spiritual or philosophical framework genuinely resonates with your own particular worldview and understanding of how life and meaning actually operate. Consider, finally, extending genuine patience toward yourself as you begin or continue this practice, recognizing that consistent, meaningful spiritual or reflective practice typically develops gradually over time, rather than through immediate, perfect implementation from this very first moment of genuine intention and commitment. There will likely be days when this practice feels natural and easy, alongside other days when it feels more difficult to genuinely access or prioritize amid competing demands and distractions. Both kinds of days represent normal, expected parts of developing any genuinely sustained practice, rather than evidence that you have somehow failed or that the practice itself lacks genuine value and significance. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you continue honoring this morning's faith, one honest, deliberate choice at a time.